Hi, I'm Jordan McDonald, staff writer with GovCIO Media and Research, and today I'm joined by Diane Sabatino, Acting Executive Assistant Commissioner at the Office of Field Operations at U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Hi, Diane. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Diane, CBP is in a really interesting place right now, considering the types of emerging technologies that are being developed. And I sort of just wanted to ask how and what some of those technologies are that CBP is using, and how are they helping the agency do a better job with protecting our borders and ports?
Oh, absolutely. And very much appreciate the opportunity to talk about the technology that's really getting layered into our border enforcement strategy. Certainly, non-intrusive inspection technology is not new to CBP. We've had non-intrusive inspection technology for a number of years now, but obviously the technology continues to get better. So there's better business use cases for us. But in addition to that, we have facial biometrics that we're leveraging. Again, not new, but newer to the federal government. And now also layering in anomaly detection algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and very excited about what the opportunities present for us, because when we look at mitigating threats, we always start with security in rolling out any new policy practice or technology. And technology is, there's NII is just one tool. Our most valuable resource. We always start with our frontline personnel because our personnel are the ones leveraging the tools. But we always start with security to mitigate the threats and where we can leverage better technology. I think that when we see that starting point with security, if we execute it well, the immediate byproduct of that is facilitation. Because what it enables our officers to do, we remove administrative burdens from our frontline personnel, and we can actually put them to the threats to do what they do best, which is to talk to people, to determine intent, and to actually search commodities, whether it's identified through non-intrusive inspection technology that there's an anomaly, or one of our canines hits, another valuable tool that we have in our operations. Keeping up, we're moving at the speed of government. Frankly, I think we're moving faster than at the speed of government, but especially with this endeavor, deploying non-intrusive inspection technology across our southwest borders, that was a new concept to make it pre-primary drive-through technology, but making sure that we were tying all of the data together. So as conveyance comes through the non-intrusive inspection technology, there's also RFID readers, right, for documents. There's license plate readers. There's radiation portal monitors, and also facial biometrics in some of the locations with our commercial conveyances. So we tie all that information together as the conveyance comes through before it reaches primary. That information is all consolidated, and someone is adjudicating that information and providing better information back to our frontline officer who now can speak to the driver or leverage other tools such as canine in the process.
Absolutely. Can you help me understand how the agency is specifically looking at technologies like AI or biometrics and how these emerging technologies are contributing to the larger mission?
I think to speak to the larger AI strategy for the agency, because it's much bigger than the Office of Field Operations. Certainly our Chief Operating Officer, James McCammett, could really speak to the holistic. But we're working hand in hand with our partners, in particular in the U.S. Border Patrol, making sure that we're tracking what they are working on, that we can integrate as possible, and vice versa with all of the offices. But for us in the Office of Field Operations, like I said earlier, really for us, it's about leveraging tools that can mitigate the amount of time that we spend on administrative burdens or things, frankly, that can be done better with technology. I think facial biometrics is a good example where we layer in our biometric facial comparison technology into our primary processing, and that's at our airports. We're deployed across 21 seaports for cruise passenger, but also in all of our pedestrian lanes at our northern and southern border. And what that facial biometric does is ensure that we have verified the identity against our holdings for the U.S. government to ensure that the individual is who they say they are. right? We're really mitigating and frankly leveraging technology that is better than the officers at determining whether or not someone's an imposter. But at the same time, leveraging this technology can be scary at times. If people do not understand what the true business use case, if they don't understand what the evaluation measures are behind it, that we are constantly assessing what our match rates are. And very happy to say that our match rates on entry are at like 99.3%. And on exit, because we do leverage facial biometrics and outbound in our air environments, is at 98.6%. Without those high match rates, we would be challenged with leveraging the technology, frankly, because we have to ensure, one, that it's fair and equitable, that there is no impact to individuals of different skin tones, genders. We want to make sure that we're measuring all of those elements. And we've seen, because of how we've employed the facial biometric technology, it's not a photo of an individual that's compared to millions or billions of photos that potentially could exist in holdings, whether it's U.S. passport holders, visa holders, or prior DHS encounters. With information, we have the traveler verification service, which we leverage in our air and maritime environments. So the traveler verification service builds galleries based on advanced passenger information that we receive. So there's a high likelihood that because we have that advanced passenger information, it frankly limits the latency with searching. It is faster to identify because that individual, because of their advanced passenger information, their passport information, or their visa information, that we have a photo for them on file, and it should be in the gallery that's created for that flight or that vessel. So it's not 1 to a billion, big N, but it is it's not 1 to 1. In our land border environment, because we don't have advanced passenger information, we do a 1-to-1 comparison with the document that's presented by the individuals coming through our pedestrian lanes. And we're also working to implement with advanced passenger information, and right now it's voluntary. We are working through the regulatory process for commercial conveyances such as buses, and exploring what opportunities we have to get advanced information from travelers who are crossing our southwest border. So that's really, we're testing. Currently, we were testing in Mariposa. We'll be kicking off a test in Buffalo to ensure that we have the right technology to capture at speed vehicles, do the facial biometric for vehicles that are crossing. And frankly, the reason that we have not deployed the facial biometric in the vehicle environment now, we rely on our officers, is because we haven't found the technology that produces those high match rates. Because it is the 1-to-1, the facial matching, when we can get a usable photo, works very well, and the matching is very high. It's getting the usable photos, and that's really down to like environmental factors, windshields, sun glares, dirt on the windshields, those type of things, even down to traveler behavior, right? So it's much more than just one piece of technology that gets us to success on those match rates.
Absolutely. I feel like when it comes to emerging technology, sometimes it can be a little scary for those who are trying to adopt it. I'm curious what steps the agency is taking as it's deploying these new technologies to help agents, become comfortable with using biometric technology, become comfortable with using artificial intelligence in their daily operations, and understand that this is here to help rather than work them out of a job.
Right. And I have to be honest, I think when we saw going back, and it's not new with the technology that we're deploying now. I remember when automated passport control kiosks rolled out back in, it's like probably 2010, 2011, 2012. There was a kind of a bit of a sentiment. It wasn't vast across the environments where the automated passport control kiosks were deployed, but hey, is this replacing officers? The reality is, it's not replacing officers. We are just leveraging technology that's moving through those administrative burdens. And we need this technology because, like, the passenger volume continues to grow. we can't be the reason that commerce isn't flowing. Cargo volume continues to increase. There's always new and innovative ways to do business. There's always new routes or different travel patterns. We need to be poised and ready, and that's what the technology allows us to do. The reality is we can't staff our way out of, I think, the anomaly detection algorithms with respect to our non-intrusive inspection technology is a good example, right? Going back to before we implemented or started to deploy the NII, pre-primary NII to our southwest border, we were scanning about 1 to 2% of passenger vehicles and about 15 to 17% of commercial vehicles. And that was in our secondary spaces. So I'm going to have to validate the numbers because I have a lot of numbers in my head at any given time. But for commercial conveyances, it was probably about 1 million images. Now we're going to be scanning about 70% of commercial conveyances. I should say at least 70%. It may actually wind up being more once all the deployments are done, which is going to translate to about 5 million scans that are going to have to be adjudicated. And in our passenger vehicles, I mentioned that 1 to 2%. Now we're going to be getting to about 40%, which is going to translate to about 23 to 25 million scans. We could not staff our way out of adjudicating all those images. We would need huge command centers staffed with a few hundred people with the hours of operation. It doesn't make sense for us to do that. Even the physical footprints would require significant infrastructure changes and investments when we have technology that can really help us refine. And the artificial intelligence and the officers, as we see I've been doing this for 27 years. I remember when we went from hand rolling fingerprints and faxing them to the FBI, right, to get a response maybe hours, sometimes days later on those fingerprints. When the digital machines rolled out, it was frankly embraced by all of us because I wasn't walking out the door covered in black ink every day from rolling fingerprints, but it got us real-time information. And that's what we're really endeavoring to do with the technology, to put better information right at the fingertips of our frontline personnel. So, and by ensuring that they have that information right at their fingertips, they can make better decisions quicker. So those anomaly detection algorithms, and I think I'll say too, when new technology is deployed, we always look for the outcomes. And what we wind up seeing in every instance that I can think of is a better outcome than we could have potentially forecast, because once it's in the hands of our operators, they'll always make it better. They will always look at kind of that ground operation and make sure that it is really integrated into the workflow the right way. So, we forecast, like I said, with the facial biometric, that's why we're still in the testing. We're not going to deploy that until it's ready, that we can get better match rates and confirm, that we're getting better photos. But once our officers, that's where they really, start to incorporate. And I didn't mention kind of like the intelligence landscape, right? Because once that technology gets out into the field, right, there's the local intelligence that they have, right, based on what's going on, in the vicinity of that port of entry, layering in the regional information, and then frankly, the national intelligence picture that comes in. And that's where you see phenomenal outcomes. So what we see, maybe in some instances, I haven't heard it in a long time, that they're being replaced by technology, but when is it coming? We need it. There's more work to be done. So we hear that more today than maybe when we were back in kind of that 2010 timeframe with the passport control kiosks.
Absolutely. Thinking about all the borders and port entries around the country, we're talking about massive amounts of data that is coming in and being filtered through CBP. How are you ensuring that, one, that data is secure, but then also that data is, I suppose, usable for agents and helping them digest and understand what it is they're looking at so that they can drive better outcomes and make better decisions?
And it really is looking towards, certainly we leverage bots and user-defined rules, to the extent that we can, that flag things that we're looking for specifically, but also our artificial intelligence, machine learning. And we go back to about 2017 with some of the predictive modeling that we were leveraging in our southern land border environment. So we weren't necessarily calling it artificial intelligence at the time, but it was predictive modeling that was improving and being enhanced by officer feedback. So I think the messaging certainly to our frontline staff is that the way that the artificial intelligence is being built is human in the loop architecture. The way we deploy technology is that human in the loop. That decision maker is always going to be an officer, an agriculture specialist, an import specialist, someone in one of our targeting units is actually going to look at the information, but leveraging artificial intelligence to help refine the massive amounts of data. But I think really important, two things. You brought up kind of the cybersecurity aspect of it. I know because he's shared with me many times, our assistant commissioner for our Office of Information Technology, that's what keeps him up at night, the cyber threat, and making sure that there's consistent messaging out to our teams in the field, but also to people like me, like, hey, simple things like phishing emails, like constant reminders about the security threats that we deal with, safeguarding data, making sure that they are assessing. And again, I think Sunny Bagwalia best to speak to that issue, but regular and recurring briefings, not just to our frontline personnel, but all the way throughout the organization about how important the information is that we have. And we take that very seriously, but also the privacy aspects of the data. Look, we're required to do the privacy impact assessments, but having those privacy impact assessments, they're not things that we just do and then post on our website. We push them out proactively. We reach out to privacy advocacy groups. We want to make sure that they understand how we're collecting the data, what we're doing with the data, how we retain it, like store it, how we transfer the data, the access, who gets to see the data, but also how we delete the data. What are those time frames? But I think, making sure that we are as transparent as we possibly can be, because we rely, frankly, on what we do with any of the technology. All of the work that we do day in and day out relies on the public trust. And if we did not have the public trust, we would not have the success in doing what we're doing. They have to trust that we're using the data. And I think a number of examples, but the facial biometrics, all in scope individuals upon arrival are required. Foreign nationals, with the exception of certain visa classifications like diplomats, but also U.S. citizens are exempt and can opt out of facial biometrics upon arrival. We track opt-outs, but the numbers are like negligible. They almost aren't measurable, except we know every single one of them. But in comparison, it's like 0.00, in terms of the people that are actually opting out. I think we're at like 592 million that have participated or come through leveraging facial biometrics at this point. Individual travelers, not crossings.
Absolutely. And so, we talked a lot about the emerging technologies that CBP is already using, but I'm thinking about the future. How is the agency looking towards, other emerging technologies and considering, a lot of the things you talked about, privacy, security, efficiency, and thinking about the ways that, like, going into the future, the agency might tackle technology as a whole?
And we work very closely. So we have within the Office of Field Operations, we have our Innovation Strategy Directorate. And they are the responsible entity really for working with all of the different, whether it's our Cargo Conveyance and Security Directorate, our National Targeting Center, our Admissibility and Passenger Programs Directorate. They're really the ones responsible for kind of going out there and gathering requirements. And the requirements from, for example, admissibility and passenger directorate. Our airport modernization strategy relies very heavily on ensuring that we enhance security and that with the solutions that we implement to enhance security, we're not impeding commerce and slowing things down. Again, I mentioned earlier, when we execute it right, because we're addressing like the threat and the risk, we see the facilitation happening, but also like the benefit to health measures, right? A touchless, seamless process. So what our Innovation and Strategy Directorate does is gather requirements and then works with not just on their own to identify emerging technology. We have the Office of Invent in CBP, phenomenal resource across CBP where they can help and find vehicles for us to even test new technologies. but also DHS Science and Technology, a huge resource for us in terms of identifying what's next for us in terms of technology. I think looking at different business use cases for artificial intelligence, machine learning, leveraging facial biometrics in all of our environments. I think what's exciting now, we do have a new process for global entry passengers that we are testing right now in both Dulles and Miami International Airport. That's walk through at speed. It's still facial biometric, but it's also the face finding algorithm, the auto capture, making sure that we have it really to the point where it's deployable and scalable nationwide. We've had some phenomenal results from it already, and working through the ConOps. As far as the future business use cases for artificial intelligence, we've looked kind of across our enforcement landscape. I mentioned some models that we're building that we already have in place for our Southwest border, but looking at models to really help us refine in our air cargo environment. And then what's next for artificial intelligence? You mentioned we have lots of data, and we are looking for additional data points on a daily basis from our partners in the trade industry and the travel industry. How do we make sure that that information is refined to the point where it just informs our front line better? That's really where we're focused. I think in terms of Iris is a biometric that we have considered. I know a lot of other countries are looking for it, or e-gates is technology that's rolling out in other locations. And while we've explored those technologies, we haven't found the significant business use case for CBP. And it's not that we're ruling it out, but we're looking towards them potentially to be redundancies in some cases. But the walkthrough at speed really is the next kind of evolution in our airport modernization strategy.
We're looking forward to seeing the innovations and evolutions that CBP does when it comes to emerging technology. Diane, I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out for joining us, and that was really insightful.
No, really appreciate the opportunity. I get very excited talking about it because there's a lot of future opportunities for us. And frankly, even with our partnerships with TSA, who I failed to mention, working very closely with them, I think us leveraging their, frankly, lessons learned, their best practices, and vice versa. I think we've made a lot of headway with some anomaly detection work because of them, and they've made some great leaps and bounds because of the work we've done with facial biometrics. So I think it's really DHS wide, certainly the partnership between our two agencies. But thanks so much for the opportunity.